Film, a work of visual art used to stimulate experiences that communicate ideas, stories, perceptions, beauty, or atmosphere by utilizing moving images.
Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. That was the teaser for Spider-Man 2 that came out in the year 2004. Completely blew my mind away. This is a film that is one of the best sequels of all time. It is the greatest Spider-Man film ever made. It is one of the greatest characterizations I've seen in any film in history, and for a fact, it is Tobey Maguire's favorite film that he's been part of in his entire career. So here we go. Here it is. Spider-Man 2, music, and the burden of responsibility. Spider-Man 2 is a heartfelt and touching superhero drama surrounding the character of Peter Parker as he faces the personal dilemma of no longer wanting to be Spider-Man. In this video, we will analyze how music illustrates the burden of responsibility within the picture and the undeniable weight of being a superhero. The level of intrinsic detail that is brought forward within the picture is remarkable. The film, in terms of its genre, is primarily a character-focused drama, with every beat in the screenplay being in service to the character arc of our very own Peter Parker. Only then is the film also considered to be a superhero film, which is what truly elevates the picture. First, character-focused drama. Second, superhero blockbuster. And how does this end up making the viewer feel? Well, you guessed it, grounded. Like to the dirt grounded. We watch Peter suffer. We watch Peter lose. He's not a billionaire playboy or even invincible. He's just a person with problems, like you and me. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about music. What most people don't realize is how much of an impact music has on a screenplay or even the simple image track within a picture. With music, we have the ability to heighten tension, we have the ability to elongate the dramatic effect of a scene, or offer perspective on the inner struggles of our character. As stated in Catherine Lakinak's film music, A Very Short Introduction, film music allows us to unify a series of images that may seem disconnected on their own, and impart a rhythm to their unfolding. It also allows us to be distracted by the technological aspects of the filmmaking, images that may be larger than life, or as minuscule as the environments that surround us. Film music has the ability to create mood and get a reaction out of the viewer, or even create an atmosphere that audience members will never forget. And this is what brings us back to Spider-Man 2, or more specifically, the music of Spider-Man 2. The music of the film was composed by the great Danny Elfman, and although many do admit to the sheer brilliance of the film's soundtrack, not enough credit is given to where it is due. To magnify the strength of the music in Spider-Man 2, and how it adds to those elements of being grounded and character-focused, we will be focusing on two scenes within the picture. The two scenes we will be analyzing are the Spider-Man No More scene and the Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head scene. What's brilliant about the following two scenes is how they utilize music to exemplify the struggle that one faces when holding the burden of responsibility, and how hopeless and lost they may feel when tackling it. Through the utilization of music, the two scenes also depict how freeing and satisfying it may feel to walk away from your responsibilities and the undeniable pleasure of being carefree. In the first scene, Spider-Man No More, Peter Parker is seen having an emotional battle with himself as the weight of being Spider-Man becomes too heavy for him. Within the image track, Peter has an inner dialogue with Uncle Ben in a heavenly vehicle, with a gazing white effect around the windows. The beautiful orchestration of Danny Elfman's scores allows the viewer to sympathize with Peter as we get a deep view of his suffering and turmoil. The pitch of the soundtrack is rather distinct, with very high notes that aid to emphasize the struggles that Peter faces.
Courage to take those dreams out into the world.
I can't live your dreams anymore. I want a life of my own.
You've been given a gift, Peter, with great power.
The dialogue between Peter Parker and Uncle Ben's character gives weight to the slow pacing of the scene, as Uncle Ben tells Peter to take his hand, but Peter does the unthinkable. He simply responds by saying no. He doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. The scene utilizes many chords from the famous Peter Parker leitmotif that is a commonly used soundtrack within the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. The leitmotif appears when a moment of weight or importance is brought forward for the character of Peter that lets the viewer recognize that something with a hefty magnitude is taking place. The scene is an incredibly somber tone, as Peter struggles to give up his responsibility, the burden that holds him back in his personal life, in order to be free, in order to be completely happy. The soundtrack allows the viewer to get inside Peter's head and watch as his inner thoughts battle each other, while the slow pacing of the music allows the scene to feel incredibly powerful. We get to see what happens when the weight of responsibility crushes our protagonist, as the sound of thundering is heard in the background, and the music accentuates his feeling of emptiness. The fact that when Peter is Spider-Man, he's alone.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, and just like a guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit.
And here we are, the other side of the mountain, the rise after the fall. Peter is free. Peter looks happy. The song Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head by B.J. Thomas completely depicts that. The scene is goofy, charming, fun, and lighthearted, while showing how freeing it is for Peter to no longer have to hold the burden of being Spider-Man. The diegetic sounds within the scene depict the New York that Peter has not been taking in since he was so focused on being Spider-Man. He is finally able to go for a walk, fix a bike, and hear police sirens without having to worry about running after them, because once again, he is Spider-Man no more. The scene is so original and different, while offering brilliant contrast to the scene that preceded it. The music choice is perfect and the song feels freeing, while the timbre of the song is tonally light. The combination of cheery vocals and instruments are warm and mellow, while the scene feels lively and new, like a fresh start for our very own Peter. His burden has been removed. He is Spider-Man no more. He can live now, and the song selection perfectly depicts this feeling of happiness that Peter can finally embrace. Look, I know I said I'd only analyze 2 scenes from this movie, but I have to do just one more. There's one more scene in Spider-Man 2 that completely drives home the message of the burden of responsibility and what that means to Peter and what that does to his life. This sequence perfectly illustrates how music can amplify the magnitude of what Peter is feeling and how he continues to struggle in life. The scene starts with Peter sitting outside the Broadway theater after having missed Mary Jane's play. He waits to see her, only for her to be surprised by her boyfriend. Peter watches from afar as a melancholic soundtrack begins to play. The tempo of the soundtrack blends with the environment of the scene, with a slow beat and a rhythm that's basic composition matches the everyday struggles in Peter's life. But what the soundtrack does alongside its image track is show Peter lose once more. It shows that being Spider-Man has a cost, that the burden of responsibility is like a weight over Peter's head, that gives him the inability to have a normal life. When the music swells and Peter Parker puts on the suit, we are reminded of his curse, his gift, his burden, that no matter what, Spider-Man comes first, and Peter comes second. Remember what I said about Spider-Man 2 being grounded? That every plot beat happens in service of the character development of Peter, and that all technical elements from the soundtrack to the image track and the narrative are in service of Peter? Well, now you know what I meant. Now you know that Spider-Man 2 isn't about fighting Dr. Octopus or the adrenaline of stopping a moving train. It's about life. It's about suffering. It's about the trials and tribulations in a young person's life. The struggles that one faces when given a gift. That power really does require a great deal of responsibility, and that through music we get to view a beautiful depiction of the pressures in a person's life, that there is weight and struggles that a person faces when being given the burden of responsibility.